So I kept having this question come into my mind while I was watching Defending Jacob episode 3 Poker Faces. And that question was, why did they have Captain America shave his beard in Avengers Endgame? Why? So I'm kind of starting this review on a frivolous note, but I felt like watching this episode, it was funny. My wife pointed out that the Barbers were a really, really attractive couple. And honestly, they're an attractive family with Chris Evans and Michelle Dockery and Jaeden Martell all being very, easy on the eyes. And, I've long made this point that, if you're going to cast a show and you have plenty of talented actors to choose from, pick the hot ones. So, before I get into my thoughts on episode 3 of Defending Jacob on Apple Plus, with spoilers, so if you don't want spoilers, come back later, or, if you don't mind spoilers, keep watching. But before I get into it, if you're interested in seeing my other reviews of Defending Jacob, I'm going to be putting them out on Friday mornings, hopefully, with regularity. Please consider subscribing to the channel so you don't miss a thing. So, getting into this episode. So the title, Poker Faces, obviously it comes from the conversation with Joanna Klein, played by Cherry Jones, and I think she's an interesting character, and I'm interested to see more of her as the series goes on. And in this scene, we kind of get to start to see the unfairness of media scrutiny. It's something that's been explored a lot lately. We've seen it in Richard Jewell, which was a very, very good movie. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen that. And it's interesting because we have this line from Joanna where she tells them, look, smile, and they'll say you're not taking it seriously. You cry, and they'll say you're faking it. On TV, only the pictures matter. And I feel like it's interesting because my wife, when we were watching the trailers for this, she thought it looked very good, but she also questioned, she thought, it's interesting, they look very, very stoic during all the courtroom scenes, and that made her a little less interested in it because she felt like it would be interesting to see more human reactions. But once you hear this explanation for it, it makes a lot of sense because people are so judgmental. Like, whatever you do, if you basically show any emotion whatsoever, someone is going to judge you for it. And it's, something that I think I need to work on and that other people need to work on is the danger of jumping to conclusions. And speaking of jumping to conclusions, it was interesting how they showed the school, and in the second episode, they showed all the kids on their phones when Jacob got taken into custody. And it's interesting how much things have changed since I was a kid when we didn't have all this access to the internet. We didn't have iPhones. We didn't have the ability to be on social media and do all this messaging. And it's interesting how you see all this constant media scrutiny of Jacob, and you see all the friends being told by the PA announcement at the school, don't jump to conclusions, but you still see everyone jumping to conclusions anyways. And I think it just goes to show the importance of, I know the legal system is not perfect. I know that. I've seen When They See Us. But I still feel like it's the best option you have, and you can't go write murder on someone's garage door because you think they committed a murder. You have to actually know, and that's why we have a justice system based on the idea of innocent until proven guilty. So this episode, again, I feel like the production values are just top-notch. I really am enjoying this show. I feel like it feels like an 8-hour movie in many regards. And, that is especially true with the casting, where you've got Chris Evans, who is a movie-level actor on this show. And I would say, though, that this episode was really Michelle Dockery's time to shine. I think that we see this episode, Lori coming to have concerns about Jacob, and we find out that Andy has hidden from his family the fact that his father, who is going to be played by J.K. Simmons, we haven't seen him yet, but he murdered a teenage girl at a community college, and he was sent away to prison when Andy was a boy. And at first I thought that this seemed hard to suspend disbelief, that he would never have told Lori this, but the explanation they gave made sense, that he claimed his father had left his mother when he was a teenager, and I bought that after they explained it. But it was interesting, the reaction, of Lori and when Jacob says, "You lied to me," and Andy says, "I didn't tell you the whole truth." And I imagine that's going to be a very, very pivotal line going forward in this series. I feel like it is probably going to be some kind of final denouement that is made by Jacob where he says, "I didn't tell you the whole truth." That's what I imagine this is going to head towards. And as I said, I feel like this was Michelle Dockery's episode. It was her time to shine. We got to see her really struggling as she wants to show trust in Jacob, but she knows things that perhaps Andy doesn't. And I feel like mothers typically tend to know their children better than fathers do. And we see Andy here in the first and second episodes. I kind of thought he was doubting Jacob, but here it kind of seems like he has faith in Jacob, and Lori is the one who's doubting. And they had this strong marriage up till this point, but this ability to believe or disbelieve Jacob could be something that puts pressure on their marriage and eventually drives them apart. It's going to be interesting to see how that goes. And it is an interesting question because you sit there and go, what would I do as a parent in this situation? Do I trust my child no matter what? Or do I have to be intellectually honest and realize that maybe he is a killer? And I feel like it happens a lot in real life where you see this situation where people are surprised when a family member or a loved one turns out to be a killer. And this show illustrates really well how that could be the case, because Jacob very well could be a killer, and you can see signs, possibly. The scene that we see, which is very, very alarming, where Jacob as a child has this bowling ball and he's getting ready to smash another kid over the head with it at a party. That was really disturbing, and it kind of hints that there's a lot more going on with Jacob than we realized. And then the whole murder gene theory that's been trotted out, that because his grandfather is a murderer, that maybe he's inherited it and he is a murderer as well. Now, I personally don't believe in genetic predisposition towards murder per se, but I do understand that we inherit a lot of things from our parents, our personalities. Even if we don't know them, oftentimes we inherit certain traits from them. So it's going to be interesting to see that explored as the series goes on. I think that's a very compelling plot line to look at. I also enjoyed the character of Pam Duffy in the show, played by Betty Gabriel. And other characters, I talked about how Skina Jaffrey's character, Lynn, and how she was not very sympathetic to me in the last episode. But what I appreciated this episode is that the good and the evil is diffused throughout the narrative. Like, you see all these things that are causing a lot of problems for the Barber family, but you completely understand the reasons why the other people in their lives are reacting this way. You see that they aren't mean-spirited. You see that they're not doing it because they want to hurt the Barbers. You see that they have reasons. And I felt like it was a very important scene where Lynn was talking about how she didn't want to make this statement to the press because it made her look bad. Well, because it made it look like she hardly knew Andy. And she's like, I would normally ask Andy in this situation what to do because I'm that close to him. And I felt like that was an important scene for her because it shows the dilemma she's in. If she supports Andy, it could hurt her. But if she doesn't, then she's, abandoning someone who's probably a close friend. And I felt like the scene with Pam Duffy where Andy shows up at her house. Again, I feel like she's a very good character because she's continuing to do what's right. I would have been annoyed with her, honestly, if she had given Andy access to his laptop. And she's not being mean-spirited about it. She's just being very professional, and I just appreciate her professionalism in this situation. It's interesting. A lot of people thought that Lori had committed suicide when Andy couldn't find her and was wandering around the house looking for her. But, I knew she hadn't, because I'm like, they're not killing Michelle Dockery off this early. And I felt like she hadn't reached the emotional, levels of despair that would be needed for that to happen. But like I said, I felt like this was Michelle Dockery's time to shine. I felt like the emotional struggles she's going through this episode are really understandable. And it will be interesting to see that explored further in future episodes. So far, I'm sticking with my initial rating. I think this is a 7.5 so far, but I hope and expect that it will get better with subsequent episodes, and I'm in it for the long haul. So if you're interested in seeing my reviews of future episodes, please subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a thing. I'll be putting my videos out on Fridays. So that's my review of Defending Jacob, episode 3, Poker Face.